Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it. It is so great to be here on the 10th anniversary of the Western Conservative Summit. And it is great to be here among fellow Coloradans, fellow Westerners, and fellow Americans. God bless you all. So a lot of people have come to the stage and talk about how much they love this state. I truly do. If you check out my Twitter account or Facebook account while I still have them, you'll notice that my Twitter background proudly advertises my love of the outdoors in Colorado. There's a scene of me looking at one of the beautiful lakes in Estes Park, and on my Twitter bio, I do confess that I am a Manitou Incline addict. And yes, so good. So I'm actually thinking that one of these days we should have a deplorable Manitou Incline climbing club. Sound good? Well, if you guys feel like waking up at 5:30 tomorrow morning, I'm doing it. You can tweet that out. So I'm going to try and keep my remarks, like me, short and sweet tonight. But I always try to cut to the chase, and I don't want to waste your time. Yesterday, as you all know, Open Borders anarchists raised the Mexican flag over the Aurora Illegal Alien Detention Center as this summit's evening speeches were underway. I tweeted it as it was happening. And the juxtaposition of these two events is rich with symbolism, and I'm going to tie it all together for you. Because the assault on our borders, the assault on the rule of law, the assault on our First Amendment rights to the freedoms of speech, religion, press, peaceable assembly, and the right to petition our government for a redress of grievances are all of a piece. If we cannot communicate freely in defense of our nation, if we cannot publish vital information about the threats that we face, who is funding them, and how we can stop them, if we cannot gather in public places without a high risk of violence, if we cannot appeal to our government for help without fear of reprisal or punishment, we will no longer be a sovereign nation. So I did something that the Open Borders Press is not going to do. I looked at who is funding and who is sponsoring the paroxysms of protest against our law enforcement, our interior enforcement agents, and our Border Patrol agents this weekend and this coming week. Here are some of the sponsors and hosts. And, you know, we live here in Colorado and we wonder, where do these people come from? Who are they? Among the hosts and sponsors of events like the one in Aurora last night, the Border Network for Human Rights, the Florida Immigrant Coalition, a group called We Count, the American Friends Service Committee Homestead, the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service. The Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service, helping to advocate and embrace and facilitate people who want to raise foreign flags above the American flag. Now you must be thinking, well, a group like that must be some left-wing social justice radical group. They must be funded by George Soros money. And in fact, many of the groups that are out there marching on the streets yesterday, today, and this coming week are in fact Soros-sponsored or Soros-tied groups, including the Center for Popular Democracy, Al Otro Lado, Code Pink, the Women's March, the American Immigration Lawyers Association. But there's something very significant about the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service that you should know about. Your money is helping fund it. Your money, our hard-earned tax dollars. In 2016, IRS records showed that 96.2% of the funding granted to the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service, which is a sponsor of the protests yesterday, 96.2% of their budget comes from tax dollars. When you follow the money, you find the truth. Nicole mentioned that I've written 6 books, and I'm giving you a preview of a 7th book that I have coming out in September called Open Borders, Inc. Who's Funding the Destruction of America? This is information you need to know, because when you follow the money, you find the truth. And in order to connect the dots, we must collect the dots. Here is where the theme of this conference comes into play, because our First Amendment rights to warn our fellow Americans about who's funding our destruction, who's behind it, what their agenda is, and how we can stop it is under threat. And ladies and gentlemen, I must tell you that I fear for my country and I fear for our freedom to speak up for it. After exercising my First Amendment rights for a living over the past quarter century, I never thought I would have to say or think such a thing out loud. I have given hundreds of speeches over the years where I've happily joked about what a blessing it is to be a little brown girl who can run her mouth for a living and put food on the table, thanks to our First Amendment. And I have to say that these days, I'm not merely worried about my ability to do that and my fellow patriots to be able to do that. I'm terrified. I've witnessed friends and allies stripped of their platforms and their reputations and their voices. Some can no longer communicate on social media. When I planted my little flag in the social media world on the internet almost 20 years ago, I never thought that I'd have to wake up one day and wonder if my entire website was going to be unplugged because of an opinion that I expressed. And yet, there are many of my friends and allies, your compatriots, who not only can no longer communicate on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook or Instagram, but who also can no longer gather peacefully at hotel conferences to discuss their ideas. Still others are now forbidden from doing business with their banks, their payment processors, online retailers, and even ride-sharing services. There is no more safe space that we can feel that we are guaranteed the right to communicate our ideas with each other, not in restaurants, not at homes. And you've seen over the last couple of years since Donald Trump took office that there are many elected officials in Washington, D.C. who can no longer walk on the streets without a threat or risk of violence to themselves or their families. Even Ravelry. How many crocheters and knitters do we have in the audience? I know we have them, come on. Right? I wrote a column just a couple of weeks ago about how Ravelry.com, which is the most popular site for crafters, announced a policy of booting off anyone who supported Donald Trump, because if you support Donald Trump or the Make America Great agenda and Keep America Great agenda, you are a white supremacist. Okay? Do you see that? Yeah, Kevin Jackson was fantastic yesterday. Who enjoyed his speech yesterday? Right? We got to tell it like it is, and we have to be unapologetic about it. And so when some pasty white liberal calls me a white supremacist, I just take my crochet needle and shake it at them. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And that's the attitude that we have to have, a fighter's attitude, not a capitulationist attitude. And I've seen way too much of that in the Beltway. That's why I was a refugee from the Beltway 11 years ago. I needed to come out to the West, right, where women here especially are not going to take that. Many people have gone underground to protect themselves and their families. And when I left the swamp 11 years ago, I saw what was coming. And it is not hyperbole to fear a complete outbreak of civil war in this country. That's why I get up every day, to make sure that doesn't happen, because we have common bonds, a common goal, and a common agenda. One nation under God. Many of my friends and allies have been mocked and defamed and ostracized on airwaves and in public spaces. They face a daily barrage of dehumanizing lies and violence and death threats, all in the name of eradicating quote-unquote hate. And we all know what they mean by that insidious code word of hate. When they say hate, what they're talking about is our love of God, our love of the Constitution, of the incredible gifts that our founding fathers have bequeathed upon us, and our love of country. I found out firsthand in May 2019 that you can be censored by Silicon Valley simply for protesting censorship. Two of my good friends, a journalist and an outspoken entertainer and thinker, Laura Loomer and Gavin McInnes, were banned from, yes, please. You are familiar with their work, their brave work. They were banned from Facebook, and so I posted a picture, 2 pictures on Facebook of me with my friends. And I was sent a warning notice and a takedown notice that simply by associating with these so-called agents of hate, I was a hater myself. A month later, Google and YouTube declared that it is now quote-unquote hate speech to criticize any individual based on his or her quote-unquote immigration status. Now, if a leftist criticizes me for standing up for immigration enforcement because I am the child of legal immigrants who naturalized as Americans and embraced assimilation, that's not hate speech, right? If they use my immigration status against me. However, if you use the term illegal alien, which is an actual term of law, you could be deemed a hater. Your Facebook account could be yanked tomorrow. Just before Independence Day, many of you who followed my work, and many of you who are still plugged in on social media, saw that my friend Andy Ngo, an independent investigative reporter and documentarian, was beaten by Portland Antifa thugs. After I helped create a crowdfunding campaign that was joined by an incredible 6,000 plus people to raise money for his security needs, his medical and equipment needs, we were both attacked by a top Oregon official from the Council of American Islamic Relations. Yes, the unindicted terror co-conspirator and Hamas-tied Muslim grievance group had the audacity to attempt to legitimize the work that I have done over the last quarter century and that Andy Ngo has been bravely doing on the front lines for the last couple of years, because this CARE official, who also happens to be a communications professor at a university in Oregon, deemed us not journalists. It is not journalism when you report the truth that the left wants to whitewash. How many of you were here for John Andrews' speech yesterday? The truth must be spoken, unvarnished, unfiltered, and unapologetic. And God bless John Andrews for continuing to fight the fight. The foreign and domestic enemies of America do not believe in borders, no matter how many times their sympathizers in the media deny it. To them, national sovereignty is a quote-unquote obstacle. I'm not making it up. That's George Soros's own words. And to quote George Soros, and to connect and collect the dots on all of the hundreds of thousands of organizations that he has funded, is now tantamount to hate speech. You can be labeled anti-Semitic, even though I'm married to a Jewish man for 26 years in 3 weeks. We'll be celebrating our 26th anniversary. Even though I'm brown, I'm a white anti-Semitic supremacist for telling the truth about George Soros. And I will not shut up until every plug is unplugged. To these foreign and domestic enemies of America, border trespassing is a human right, dissent is hate, and walls have been declared by Open Borders, evangelicals, and Catholic leaders to be quote-unquote un-Christian. Except, of course, for those century-old fortifications that surround the Vatican and the hallowed churches around the world. Shh. Why are they doing this? What is their aim? Chaos and destruction are their ultimate goals. Now, it may seem paradoxical that at this pivotal moment in American history, with a president in office who is at least more vocal than any other on the fundamental existential issues of sovereignty and self-determination, that at this same time, America First voices are being stifled and squelched and silenced. But it does make perfect sense, doesn't it? The globalists are doing everything in their power to deny President Donald Trump re-election in 2020. That is the bottom line. Again, it's not conjecture. Our good friend and patriot and incredible investigative journalist, James O'Keefe, caught Google executives on tape saying it. The caravan cartel hates Donald Trump. Soros, the Pope, the United Nations, the European Union, all consider him an evil threat to their billion-dollar migration and refugee enterprises. Antifa wants him dead. The Southern Poverty Law Center, CARE, and Silicon Valley want to purge every last one of his supporters from the public square. You've heard from many of the patriots whom I admire, who I put at the top of my list of the bravest men and women in America. My friend Brigitte Gabriel of Act for America. David Horowitz, stalwart in exposing the destructive left. So many that have addressed you, Zuhdi Jasser, other truth tellers. The enemies of the truth tellers, the enemies of sovereignty, now see the pendulum swinging back towards nationalists across Europe and Asia amid an open borders backlash in Britain and France and Italy and Poland and Hungary and even India. Cultural Marxists and big tech social justice warriors cannot compete on a level playing field of ideas, so they are rigging the game to prevent Trump supporters online from influencing voters and correcting false narratives. I gave a speech at CPAC. Don't know if any of you heard it. It drove the left nuts. Because I don't just call out the left. I call out the collusion between both parties that has led to the undermining of sovereignty in this country. And that is one of my important messages to you. When you follow the money, don't stop only on the leftist avenues. We have a lot of threats that we will be facing leading up to 2020, and some of them are within our own tent. Right? Those of you in the military are quite familiar with the term fragging. We have to be on guard not only against the Antifas, the Abolish ICE, the sanctuary anarchists, the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes, lobbing grenades rhetorically from the outside of the tent. There's also people who are not on board with protecting our borders, with making America safe and great, with keeping Colorado safe and great. Follow the money, find the truth. And with regard to First Amendment issues, you can do things within your own power. If you can't be out there on the front lines, spend a little money supporting the people who are. And most importantly, guard your children. Silicon Valley, big tech, and big business, the collusion and alliance between these two entities is, I believe, the greatest threat to our children. And they are hooking your kids from an early age in the classroom, in public school classrooms that you subsidize. They are data mining your children. They are tracking their every movement. They are tracking their personal habits, their psychosocial behavior, and yes, their political ideology. And if you support politicians that are pocketing money from Google and Facebook, you are supporting the deplatforming of the people who are on the front lines fighting for this country. The attitude that I have about the threats that we face and about our place in history in the world right now is an ambivalent one. I mentioned that I have fear. I mentioned I have more anxiety than I have ever had before. But I also have hope. When I saw 6,000 people step up to the plate like that within 72 hours to come to the aid of a young journalist who had been beaten so badly that he suffered a brain bleed, dig into their pockets and give $5 or $10 or $15, it gave me hope. When I see the people who are going out there and putting their bodies and lives on the line, not just civilians facing these thugs, but foremost, the men and women in uniform. If not for them, I wouldn't be able to have the blessed life that I have in Colorado from 7,000 feet on high. Every day, whether it's police officers, Border Patrol, ICE, and our military, walking the walk, not just talking the talk. My blood boils to see far-left open borders radicals claiming to be representing what American values are, smearing those men and women every day, likening them to Nazis and the KKK and jackboots. You have an opportunity this week as the left-wing agitation ramps up to push back against that. Exercise your First Amendment rights on behalf of those who allow us to exercise ours. I started my career in LA. I was here in 2003 at a small little conference with Dick Lamb and Mike McGarry of the Colorado Alliance for Immigration Reform, fighting the matricula consular card and warning about how voter fraud and the corruption of secure IDs threatened American sovereignty. That was 16 years ago. And in many ways, things have gotten worse. We need to make Denver and Aurora and Colorado Springs, which has been my adopted hometown for 11 years, and Colorado a safe space for American patriots who believe in the rule of law, assimilation, and the things that made America great. We cannot do that if we are not united. There's a lot going on the ground, and I did want to mention that I'm very grateful to the folks who've been spreading the word about a documentary that I did with Citizens United several years ago called Rocky Mountain Heist. We need to take Colorado back from the heisters. We can't do that unless more people are educated about how it happened and who's funding it. And I will continue to do that for the rest of my years that I live out here in Colorado. And I hope that you'll keep in touch with me on social media, on my website. And I want to once again thank the Western Conservative Summit for bringing you all together. It's easy to sit in a green room or on a seat in a TV studio and to preach to people about our values. The hard work is the work that you do on the ground and on the front lines. And I want to know that I recognize and honor and appreciate everything that you do to defend the First Amendment and all of our rights as Americans. God bless you.